Welcome to H2O Croutons.
I'm Alexis.
And I'm Jennifer. Together, we're mother
and daughter co-host. Think Gen Z
meets Gen X, and let the games begin. We're here to add a little crunch to your day with real talk on everything from A to Z.
From pop culture and the latest news to deep dives on topics that you didn't even know you cared about, we've got you covered.
So, grab a drink, get cozy, and let's dive in. This is H2O Croutons. Welcome back to H2O Croutons. If you're new here, I'm Jennifer, your host, with the most, apparently. It's what my daughter says. At any rate, today's episode is going to be something a little historical, and it's in regard to military, nothing too boring. However, there's a reason why I've chosen to do this, and that will be the last segment of 3 separate segments, and it is about my cousin. So I'll first go into my American Revolution 6th and 7th great-grandfathers, and then I'll move on to the Civil War with my 4th great-grandfather, although I had a few that actually fought in that. And lastly, I will get to my cousin and the significance between her and our 4th great-grandfather. It's really interesting. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. We'll get right into it. What I'm going to talk about first are my 6th and 7th great-grandfathers. They are named Felix, was my 7th, and Jacob was the 6th. At any rate, so essentially, Felix came over with his dad, Hans Jacob, from Marthelen. If I'm saying that incorrectly, I'm sorry, Switzerland. And he was 8 years old. He came over into Pennsylvania via a ship called Mercury, and I believe the captain's name was William something. I'd have to look that up. Interesting enough, years later, he ends up fighting in the American Revolutionary War. So did Jacob, my 6th great-grandfather. It started with my 8th great-grandfather named Hans Jacob Matzinger, my 7th great-grandfather, which was Hans Jacob's son, and his name was Felix Matzinger, and then my 6th great-grandfather, Felix's son, named Jacob Matzinger. It's actually a pretty popular name, more so on the East Coast, because there's a lot of them that still live there. Most of the information was already researched out by Daughters of American Revolution. Then I had a cousin who made the connection and then told me that all I would need to provide was my connection to my great-great-grandma, which I can do. I have not done it yet. No big deal. Interesting to know that somebody I am directly a descendant of, 2 of them, fought in this huge war, provided our independence as a country. Felix and Jacob both, who, again, he was only 14 years old, and they were with this man that everybody called Swamp Fox. Now, I have read that the movie The Patriot is loosely based on him and some other people in the past from back in that time frame, which is interesting. So now I want to go watch it again, because there were only 35 men in his unit, and 2 of them were my 7th and 6th great-grandfathers. I'll just read you what it says here. Matzinger is a family name associated with Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, a Revolutionary War hero. The Swamp Fox was a legendary figure of the American Revolutionary War, known for his guerrilla warfare tactics in the Carolinas. According to documents that I have, so it's not guessing, it says Felix Matzinger was known as the Eyes of the Swamp Fox, and his son Jacob, age 14, was known as the Swift Legs of the Swamp Fox. The Swamp Fox is made up of 35 men and boys who, together with Francis, fought for liberty in North and South Carolina. Felix was 48 at the time, and he was a valuable procurer of food, supplies, information, etc. Jacob Matzinger was a boy soldier in the service of Francis Marion, the famous swamp fox, along with Jacob's father, Felix Jackson Matzinger. So his full name, Felix Jackson Matzinger. Felix furnished horses and supplies and spied on the British. So just some interesting tidbit there. There's lots more information out there on the swamp fox. He's pretty interesting. I guess he could not be caught. I guess he would just come in, do his thing, sneak up on you, and be gone before you even realized what was happening, and nobody knew where he would go. And that would mean that my 6th and 7th great-grandfathers were there for all that, and I think that's pretty cool. Because if you had any idea how many great-grandparents you have, you would be floored. My story on Hans Jacob, Felix, and Jacob Matzinger and their service to the American Revolutionary War that gained the United States its independence. So you guys will be right back, and we'll be talking about my 4th great-grandfather, who is not related to the previous 2 I just spoke about. I'll be right back. Welcome back. We're going to go right into it. But my 4th great-grandfather, I'm just going to read an article that was posted May 26, 2006. 2006? Yes, that's right. There's a reason. It's pretty interesting. So this is in Fredericktown, Missouri. It says, for more than 100 years, a hero lay buried in a St. Louis unknown to his family and unknown to his community. Although a stone at Mount Lebanon Cemetery on St. Charles Rock Road marks his gravesite, no one is really sure that the remains of Henry Frizzell are even there. Monday, this man who died a pauper in St. Louis in 1904 will be honored here as Madison County's only recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor. Finally, his family and community will have the opportunity to pay respects to this Union soldier who labored so hard to get his military record cleared and to eke out a meager life for himself and his family in the years following the Civil War. Frizzell's great-great-grandson, Charles Dalton, I know him, of St. Louis, and his 2 uncles, Michael and David Sutton, will be in Fredericktown, Missouri on Memorial Day to honor their ancestor. The Medford McClanahan American Legion Post 248 will hold a dedication ceremony at 11 a.m. Monday on the south lawn of the Madison County Courthouse to dedicate a monument to Frizzell as the county's only Medal of Honor recipient. Dalton said that Frizzell died of consumption on May 25, 1904 at City Hospital in St. Louis. He was buried in what they call Potter's Fields, where they bury all the poor. His remains have since been moved twice, and now supposedly rests in Mount Lebanon Cemetery on St. Charles Rock Road in St. Louis. When the city sold the ground at Potter's Field in 1957, all remains were moved to Mount Lebanon Cemetery. When they sent the remains to the cemetery, there were no markers to accompany any of them. All the remains were put in one section of the cemetery. That land was also later sold, and the remains were moved again to another section. According to Dalton, a marker was dedicated to his ancestor, and that is sitting outside of the cemetery, but we don't know where he's at, so we don't even know if he's actually there. When Frizzell was buried, there was no indication that any of his family was present. One thing, however, is certain: those burying him did not know Frizzell, the man, or Frizzell, the hero. The attack on Fort Sumter in 1861, coupled with the promise of pay and food to eat, were enough to entice a 21-year-old farmer from Fredericktown to join the Union Army. Henry Frizzell went to Pilot Knob on August 6, 1861, and he enlisted as a private in Company B, 6th Missouri Infantry. Henry was not a tall man. Through letters written for him, a picture emerges of a fair-haired, gray-eyed man who was born and raised on the Big St. Francis River. He was born into a poor family, and his parents, Jason and Odile Frizzell, could neither read nor write. Henry reports in letters written for him that there were no schools for him to attend, so he could not read or write either. In fact, whenever they would sign their name on their court documents or land, it would always be with just a simple X. I only know that because I have all of the records, including Henry's entire personal military record from start until way after he died. It's a big file, 176 pages, and costs a small fortune, but I have it. At any rate, Henry tells of being wounded several times. He was captured twice by Confederates and worked for many years following the end of the Civil War to have desertion charges expunged from his record. According to historical accounts from the time of Henry's enlistment, the 6th Missouri Infantry was in the thick of many battles and traveled from Springfield, Missouri in October 1861 to Vicksburg, Mississippi in 1863, where they joined the assault on the last Confederate stronghold on the Mississippi River. It was his actions during this assault that the Medal of Honor was bestowed upon him. He was shot in the right side of his head, just below his right eye, as he made an assault on Fort Hill. He was captured by the Confederates and spent 1 week in their hospital. He was then paroled and sent to the Jefferson, Ohio Federal Hospital, where he spent 2 months. What did he do at Vicksburg? Well, this is what got him the Medal of Honor. Frizzell was a member of a group named Forlorn Hope, Volunteer Stormer. A book, which I have, called Deeds of Valor, How America's Civil War Heroes Won the Congressional Medal of Honor, published in 1903, recounts in detail the deeds of the volunteer storming party of Vicksburg. According to the book, this group, made up entirely of volunteers, led the general assault on Vicksburg on May 22, 1863. The assault was thought to be so dangerous that the Union commander, General Ulysses S. Grant, would not allow married men to even volunteer. Grant had underestimated the strength of the Confederates, and although he had the city circled on 3 sides with a 12-mile battle line and warships stationed on the Mississippi River, things were not going well for the Union general. Wanting to avoid lengthy siege, Grant decided to storm the city. The Confederate had dug in along the top of a bluff, and Grant chose a portion of that bluff, which was to the south of Fort Hill. This fort, in addition to being almost perpendicular, was protected by a ditch about 12 feet wide and 5 or 6 feet deep, and sloping up towards the enemy's guns. It was estimated that the storming party needed at least 150 men. Twice that number answered the call, with those volunteering first being accepted. The battle plan was formulated. The men were to build a bridge over the ditch and plant ladders against the embankment. By the time they had accomplished this feat, it was expected the supporting brigades would be ready to make the first assault. The assault was on the morning of May 22nd, 1863. The storming party gathered in a ravine out of sight of the Confederates. Here they had a pile of logs, lumber, and scaling ladders. The advance party's job was for 2 men to carry the logs, run towards the trench, and throw them across the ditch to form the base of a bridge. The second group was to follow closely with lumber to throw across those logs, and the third group was to bring the ladders, run across the bridge, and place the ladders up against the fort. From minute 1, things did not work well for the Forlorn Hope Enemy fire was so heavy that as they advanced at a dead run, about half of them were shot down, and the area was thick with smoke. When the survivors did arrive at the ditch, they could not make a bridge because so many logs and pieces of lumber had been dropped. They also discovered they could not stay where they were because of heavy enemy fire. Historical accounts relate the survivors jumped into the ditch, and Private Howell Trojan, who carried the storming party's flag, planted it at the fort. Trojan kept firing at the enemy when they tried to reach the flag. Other brigades advanced to support the small group of men, but only 30 men, those of the 11th Missouri, reached them. They planted their flag and dug in wherever they could find shelter. It was reported that the bottom of the ditch was filled with mangled bodies with heads and limbs blown off. The assault had plainly failed, but the men in the ditch could neither retreat nor advance. They held their position until under the cover of darkness, and they were able to leave. Of the storming party, 85% of them were killed, and there were only a few who escaped without a wound of some kind. In the fighting that followed, the Union suffered more than 3,000 casualties, and 97 Union soldiers earned medals of honor. One of those men was my fourth great-grandfather. A letter written by a friend in Fredericktown, found in his Medal of Honor file, reported Frizzell believed his regiment was in Alabama when he rejoined it after being released from the hospital in Jeffersonville, Ohio, following that siege in Vicksburg. He does report in letters that he fought at the Battle of Chattanooga, Tennessee on Lookout Mountain. I'm going to pause and just say I have actually walked in his steps at both locations, courtesy of our wonderful National Park Rangers. It's an amazing thing that people don't know that they do. They are really a wealth of information. They helped me track everything down, tell me exactly where to go, and it was really neat and powerful, especially the Vicksburg one. I just remember standing at that ditch going, how the hell did he survive? He did. Barely, but he did. And he volunteered to do this. He might have been little in stature, but he was big on bravery. With this regiment now under the command of General William Sherman, he continued in the march to Atlanta and was shot in the left leg above the knee at the Battle of Resaca, Georgia, and went to the hospital. He rejoined his unit and remained with it through Georgia and Carolina until March of 1864. On March 1st, 1864, at Lynch Creek, North Carolina, Frizzell ended his warriors. He went with a friend to a house to rest and was captured by enemy forces. He escaped from the Confederates and, thinking the war was over, began his long trek back home to Missouri. This move resulted in desertion charges being brought against him. In letters written for him to help get the charge removed from his military record, he tells of being tired, confused, and captured. In a letter written on February 18, 1891, Frizzell tells how Andy Harness, who was in the same regiment with him, persuaded him to go to a private home where they could get some rest. He said Harness convinced him that the rebels were whipped and the war would soon be over. While they were resting at the home, they were captured by the Confederates. They did escape, but the regiment had moved north, and with Confederates everywhere, Frizzell is quoted as saying, quote, "It was impossible to rejoin the unit." End quote. It is reported that everywhere they went, they kept hearing that the war was over, so he just started working his way back to Madison County. And another letter states, "My head hurt, and my left leg, which had been wounded, gave out." The author of the letter wrote that Frizzell said he only went to the home with Harness because he was not well and was completely worn out. The writer said Frizzell told him that since being wounded in Vicksburg, his memory had been bad, and he cannot recall important things to family and myself. I am satisfied that at times I am not right in my head. I was laboring under the stage of mind when I left my command. Several more letters, written in February of 1891, attested to Frizzell's good character, but alluded to mental problems, probably caused by his injuries suffered at Vicksburg. One letter, written by a man named Jonathan Williams, said, quote, "After the war, he has been a weak mind, almost like an idiot, and hardly of a mind to care for himself. He is very poor and destitute, and the only support from what labor he can do." End quote. In another letter written by a man named Fielding King, who enlisted in the 6th Regiment with Frizzell, said, and I quote, "Henry was shot on the side of his head, cutting his ear and corner of right eye at Vicksburg. When he rejoined the regiment, he never appeared to be entirely himself. He would never have left with Andrew Harness on his own accord. He was a good soldier. He never shirked of his duty nor tried to keep out of battle. He returned to Madison County in September of 1865. Thomas Halliday stated that he had known Frizzell since childhood and aided him as he could. He said he paid for all the costs for postage and affidavits because he is very poor, illiterate, and ignorant. His mind is weak and memory bad, but he is a really good citizen." All these letters must have helped because in the letter dated on March 31st, 1891, the War Department removed the charge of desertion from his record. The last letter in Frizzell's Medal of Honor file is one dated June 30th, 1894, which says that he had been awarded a Medal of Honor, which he would be forwarded to him by mail. The letter stated, "I have the honor to inform you that, by direction of the President, and without solicitation from any source, the award being based solely upon the official records, let a Medal of Honor be presented to Private Henry F. Frizzell, Company B, 6th Missouri Infantry, for most distinguished gallantry in action at Vicksburg, May 22nd, 1863. None of his living descendants, including me, know what happened to that Medal of Honor. We also don't know how his life officially ended in St. Louis. We don't know why he was by himself. But on Memorial Day, May 26, 2006, none of that really matters, because a hero will finally be honored and remembered, and members of his family and community will be witness to the ceremony. That is my 4th great-grandfather, and I'm very proud to talk about him. For everything he went through and how he died seems sad, but yeah, it's his daughter was my 3rd great-grandmother. So that's that. When you come back, I'm going to tell you why May 26, 2006 was so important, not to just Henry, but also my cousin, Sergeant Amanda Pinson. I'll be right back.
Come join our website at www.h2ocroutonspodcast.com to keep up on all the latest. If you want to hear our new episodes a few days earlier and get exclusive access to members-only benefits, join our Patreon. For just $5 a month, you will get exclusive members-only benefits. After 3 months, we'll send you an H2O Croutons official sticker. You can also join our free mailing list to be notified of contests, upcoming episodes, and more. Please show your support by following us on our socials. Just search H2O Croutons on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and more. To add us on Discord, search for h2o.croutons.podcast, all lowercase, and add us. If you have a question, need advice, or want to share your thoughts on any topic we discuss in our episodes, simply send us an email at h2oquestion@gmail.com. Or you can call or leave us a text at 1-786-505-2194. Again, that is 1-786-505-2194. H2O Croutons is syndicated on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, SiriusXM, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Player FM, and more. Please make sure you like, follow, and review on your favorite platform. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Stay crunchy!
Hey, welcome back to the last segment of this particular episode that I still have no idea what I'm going to name. My cousin, Sergeant Amanda Pinson. And I wish you were here for you to hear her cute little voice. Amanda joined the Army, I believe it was in 2003. I'm positive it was. And she took her test. They said, oh, wow, you're really smart. We'd like to put you in Intel. So that's what she did. In 2005, she was told, you're going to deploy to Iraq. And right about that time, she also had an appendicitis attack. So she was able to stay home with us for a couple more months. Thank God. I'm sorry, I get emotional when I talk about her. You'll understand in a minute. But, yeah. She had to stay home and then she had to deploy. Now, the last time I saw her was her leaving my apartment building, and she had come over to spend time with me and Lexi. Lexi was a little one at that point, like not even one yet. She started leaving and then she just stopped. She must have been 30 feet away and started running at me, and she jumped up and just hugged me as hard as she could like a bear. And she had tears in her eyes. And she's like, Jenny, how? And by the way, my cousins are the only one who can get away with calling me Jenny. I just want to make that clear. I do not like it, and I'll explain that some other day. But she's like, Jenny, what am I going to do? I'm going to miss all these things with Lexi. Or first time she walks, first time she crawls. And she was really upset. And I'm like, I'll take pictures. I'll take video. And she's like, take all the pictures. Take all the pictures. And when she passed, she had a bunch. She really loved Lexi. And in fact, the day that she was killed, they found a picture of Lexi that I had sent to her that I had taken for Christmas. And I guess she was walking around and showing everybody that day, hey, my little cousin, blah, 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 blah. And I actually have that picture, and someday I will let Lexi have it. Long story short, on March 16th, 2006, my cousin, Sergeant Amanda Pinson, was at work, and she was waiting for a shuttle to take her to the mess hall so she could eat lunch. And while she was waiting, her and a gentleman by the name of Specialist Carlos Gonzalez were waiting. I'm sure she was talking because she was always so sweet. A mortar hit someone. The enemy had shot a mortar into the compound. And unfortunately, it took both her and Carlos's life. I could go into how we all found out and what it did to us, but that may be a story for another time, because it's not just my story to tell. It's actually, I think everybody has their own story and their own way how it impacted them. And I run a Facebook page for her, and I try to be very careful on not speaking for my whole family, because I do believe that each individual feels things differently, and one's perspective may not be the other. So I'm going to leave it at that. We can all agree on one thing. My cousin was an amazing human being. I looked up to her, and she was 11 years younger than me. I'm 11 years younger than her mom, who's my aunt, which was really interesting. Wasn't planned. She's really neat. And I miss the random phone calls. A lot of people don't know this, but she would call me. I wouldn't talk to her for a while because she was young and having fun. And she'd call up and she'd go, I miss you, I need to come see you. And I'm like, okay. And I would call into work sick. Sorry if any of my old bosses hear this. I'm sure you understand. But yeah, I would call into my work sick and spend the day and night talking with her. We would go up to her work, or her old work, Denny's, where she was a waitress, and drink soda and eat food and just talk about anything. And I felt she was more like a little sister. She had something about her that I did not figure out, but she came in and had it done. This girl made everyone feel loved. She would tell you, I love you. It didn't take much. She could know you for a few days, and she would just tell you that. She wanted you to know you were loved. She wanted you to know that you mattered. And that is something a lot of people don't have really that. But yeah, so I'm going to read something. I want to preface this with, I know at our funeral, I knew my cousin made a big impact on people because of who she was. It would be hard not to. She was very special. And at our funeral, I remember for about 8 to 9 hours, it was a steady line of people from all walks of life and time frames and military and high school and brownies and anything else. Just co-workers, it didn't matter. They were all coming to pay their respects, and it was beautiful. It was hard. They did a changing of the guard every 15 minutes, which was very emotional. It was our first real interaction with that, experience with it. But then there was the funeral the next day, with the burial and the funeral. They had to take the entire funeral home and use closed circuit television because not everyone could fit in one room. And it was a big room, like a really big room. That's the impact Sergeant Amanda Pinson made. But what I like to say was also the impact that my cousin Amanda Pinson made. Because I will always remember the girl before the soldier. I can't help it, but I'm damn proud of what she did as a soldier. But I always tell people, remember my cousin, not just Amanda, Sergeant Pinson, but Amanda, because she was Mandy and she was sweet. And I don't want that ever forgotten. So that's my personal take on it. I will tell you that her mom started a nonprofit, and I helped with everything I could. I managed 5K registrations, and it got big. I did the website, some graphic work, research to find all of these people that we honored on this wall. And it's called, if you'd like to look it up, the Missouri Military Memorial. And it's at Jefferson Barracks Park, not the cemetery next door, but Jefferson Barracks Park in St. Louis. If you're in the area, please go check it out. It's very beautiful. The design, my aunt nailed it. It was neat. It's sweet. It's made of black marble. The etchings are in there in white. There's a big memorial wall. There's little benches. There's also a huge pavilion. So take some barbecue, sit with your family. There's a path out there that you can walk. It's just phenomenal. And the park now has taken over because we raised the money to build it all. And when we did, the park took it over. So they are now responsible. You'll see when you go that people will lay flowers at the wall all the time. It's hard for me to go there because it makes me very emotional thinking about, if you can't tell. But yeah. So what I'm going to do is I want to read what the NSA wrote about my cousin. Now, the NSA, as you know, is the National Security Agency. And the reason they did that is my cousin was what they call a cryptologist, which is a form of intelligence. And I thought how they wrote it was beautiful. But it says, from an early age, Amanda Pinson was ambitious and eager to engage the world around her. A native of the Show Me State, she was raised in the shadow of Jefferson Barracks. She was raised right down the road. She was raised right down the road from Jefferson Barracks. And that is an old outpost, 18th century military outpost located on the Mississippi River. It says near St. Louis, but it's actually in St. Louis. Before being closed in 1946, the post named for Thomas Jefferson would be home to the host of famous Americans, including Ulysses S. Grant, who we've already talked about earlier with my fourth great-grandfather, Zachary Taylor, and William T. Sherman. Unlike Grant, Taylor, and Sherman, Amanda would never be elected president or achieve flag rank. But, like them, throughout her time on Earth, she would inspire others with her courage and leadership. As a child, she excelled not only in academics and athletics, but also in motivating others to make the world a better place. I'm telling you, she was a literal ray of sunshine. In the 4th grade, she was among the award winners for the Greater St. Louis Science Fair. Later, in her sophomore year at Hancock High School, she would, as the St. Louis Post-Dispatch described it, quote, create, design, and implement, end quote, the Hancock Environmental Leadership Program, which is short or long term for HELP. Hancock Environmental Leadership Program. The organization's main goal was to protect, clean, and improve the environment. However, under Amanda's leadership, the group extended its mission to improve the lives of local senior citizens and underprivileged children. In addition to that, Amanda also found time to excel on the basketball court, number 23, Go Hancock Tigers, and softball field for the Tigers of Hancock High. Most importantly, she was also a dedicated student whose name was no stranger to the school's honor roll. Amanda's many accomplishments in high school seemed to point to a life of great potential and promise, but making one's way in the world is never easy. After graduation, she briefly attended a community college and worked at a local restaurant. She soon decided, however, that waiting tables, quote, was not something I want to do for the rest of my life, end quote. In 2003, she joined the U.S. Army with the intent to become my own person. That was a quote, become my own person, end quote. After enlisting, Amanda would receive training in the art of electronic intelligence at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. It was there that she would learn the critical role cryptology could play in achieving victory on the battlefield and in saving lives. In time, Amanda would become part of the 101st Airborne Division, Screaming Eagles, of the U.S. Army's most storied unit. In World War II, the Screaming Eagles had distinguished themselves at Normandy during Vietnam. In 2006, the division found itself on the front lines in Iraq. Amanda was a soldier, but she was also part of a highly skilled group of individuals who fought their battles not only on the sands of the desert, but in the electronic ether. Like so many dedicated cryptologists of the past who served our nation in time of war, Amanda's role was to provide and protect essential communications that could make the difference between victory or defeat in life or death. She was actually responsible for saving countless lives. Cryptologic work is an intellectual exercise, but in time of war, it must be performed not only from garrison, but from the front lines. This means that in order to get the critical information needed, cryptanalysts must infrequently place themselves in harm's way. On March 16, 2006, Amanda and Specialist Carlos Gonzalez lost their lives when Iraqi insurgents unleashed a mortar shell into their compound north of Baghdad. She would be the 2,315th member of the U.S. Armed Forces killed in Iraq since the war began. The Irish poet James Joyce once wrote that it's better to have boldly The Irish poet James Joyce once wrote that it is, quote, better to pass boldly into the other world in the full glory of some passion than fade and wither dismally with age. Amanda Pinson's life was one of great potential that was cut short. But as Joyce noted, during her time on Earth, whether at home, at school, or on the battlefront, Amanda lived her life with a glory and a passion that should inspire us all to hold firm to those principles that have allowed this nation, through triumph and tragedy, to endure. Through her selfless devotion to her family, to her country, she touched countless lives and made an incalculable contribution to the goal of making America and the world a better and safer place to live for all people. I'll end it with May 26, 2006 here in a minute. I do want to add that she's had several memorials. She's also got a post office named after her in Afton, Missouri, which is a suburb of St. Louis. She also has a memorial tree up at her old high school. She's got a memorial that was in Iraq that to come home when they did. She also has the Sergeant Amanda N. Pinson Training Support Center at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. We were able to go and test it out. It was really cool. But at that point in time was literally the biggest training facility in the military. So pretty cool. She was also honored with the Knowlton Award, which is a very prestigious award. There's a scholarship for her at Hancock High School. If you'd like to donate to that, just send a check there. Tell them who it's for and what it's for, and they'll put it to her account. There's been a lot. The thing that I thought was pretty cool was, and there are other memorials too. There's one in NSA. There's one in what I call Fort Huaha, because I can't say it, but it's Fort Huaca, I think. But it's in Arizona. There's one up there. She's everywhere. And I mean, she's everywhere. There's one in Fort Campbell. Wherever you go, there is a memorial to her on a military base in some fashion. And then those that are not just military, but also civilian. But I want to wrap it up with one that just made me go, what are the odds? The following Memorial Day after March 16th, 2006, was May 26th, 2006. And on the very same day that my fourth great-grandfather was being honored with his Medal of Honor, my cousin, Sergeant Amanda Pinson, was being honored at the NSA on a memorial wall. She had her name etched onto the wall there. What are the odds that a fourth great-grandfather and his fourth great-granddaughter, both war heroes, were honored on the same day, one from the Civil War and one from Operation Iraqi Freedom? There's just no odds of that. It's just so slim, but so cool. I love telling that story. It is so neat. So I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. With March 16th right around the corner, go do something in Amanda's honor. She was very giving. Buy somebody their coffee. If someone's in line behind you, pay for the meal. Just go do something. Go do something in honor of her. Some people just visit the cemetery. Some people go get, biscuits and gravy because she loved biscuits and gravy. The choice is yours. There's something personal I want to add because she was my cousin, but we got along really, really well. We never really fought. We just had, little silly bickers. Like when I found out she wanted me, she goes, Jenny, I'm mad at you. And I'm like, what? I just had Lexi. Like, why? Why are you mad at me? What did I do? She goes, I was going to name my little girl Alexis. And I'm like, oh my God. Okay. I didn't know that. Don't do that to me. It was really funny. She did get to celebrate my birthday with me twice that year before she left in 2005. Our birthdays were only 3 weeks apart, so it was pretty cool. We also went to the casino out here, and she got all the birthday love. I'm like, hey, she thought it was so funny. But a couple things here is when she left that day and said she was so sad, that she was gonna miss Lexi walking and all that. Well, Lexi had not been walking at all at that point. She was just 13 months at that point. And Amanda's body finally made it back home. I'll never forget the day because it was just a hard month and those dates just stick in my head, but March 23rd. And we finally were able to get the funeral, and it was the day of the burial. Lexi was staying at home with my boyfriend at the time. I went home to get her, to take her back with me to go to that, like you have an after meal after a funeral and whatnot. And I took her with me But as I arrived home and I opened up the door to my apartment, she was standing at the entertainment center in the living room. And she turned and saw me come in the door. And with no warning and never having taken a single step, my girl walked that day. And she never stopped. So she waited until Mandy came home. And that's a personal thing for me. Yeah, it's special. I will also say that I used to have Amanda's picture. I'm gonna, whatever the side is, it's not the speedometer, but the other side. They only redo that. Whatever's on the left-hand side of your dash. But I would have her picture there. You can tell I'm a girl. And I had it there forever. And I used to have a heart made out of pipe cleaners that was red, white, and blue because I was on a fire. And she told me to carry that so it'd always be safe. And I thought it was so cute. And still have it. And they went and got her car out of storage. And sure as pie, right in the very same spot that I used to keep her picture, she had a picture of Alexis. So, I miss my cousin every day. I had a really long, hard battle with that one. And I still do, if you can't tell. It's hard for me to talk about. I usually am much better at writing because I feel like the world lost out on somebody so much more special than I will ever be. And the world could use a lot more Amandas. She was special. And I miss her. So, again, March 16th, if you would do me a favor and just honor her in some capacity. As simple as eating biscuits and gravy to giving to someone, a senior citizen, an underprivileged child. Whatever you feel comfortable with doing. Just let somebody know it's in our honor. And with that, thank you for tuning in, learning about this, and staying with me. Until next time, I'm out of here.